I 28F, never thought I'd be writing this kind of post, but I'm desperate for advice and support. I work as a senior programmer at a major tech company, where I've built a successful career over the past 6 years. Despite having more than enough income to live independently in a nice apartment, I've been living with my parents due to their insistence on family values and staying together. They've always been controlling, but I convinced myself it was just their way of showing love. Our house has always been a complex environment. My sister Emily, 32F, and her husband James, 34M, also live here. They moved back when James got a job nearby 3 years ago, and our parents were thrilled. Emily has always been the golden child, perfect grades, perfect marriage, perfect life. The comparison started early in our childhood and never really stopped. Don't get me wrong, I love my sister, but living under the same roof has been challenging. I work remotely most days, which means I'm constantly under my parents' surveillance. They monitor when I start work, when I take breaks, even who I talk to on video calls. They've convinced themselves that this level of involvement in my life is normal and necessary. My mother often barges into my home office during important meetings, claiming she forgot I was working, despite my explicit schedule being posted on the refrigerator. I have a boyfriend, Michael, 29M, who lives across the country. We've been in a long-distance relationship for 3 years, and he's incredibly supportive. My parents, however, never approved of him or our relationship. They constantly compare him to James, who they treat like the son they never had. They criticize everything about Michael, his job as a software engineer, ironically, the same field as me, his choice to live on the West Coast, even the way he dresses during our video calls. James has always been friendly, treating me more like a little sister than just his wife's sibling. We got along well, and I appreciated having someone who didn't constantly judge me. He seemed to understand the pressure I was under, often defending me during family dinners when my parents would start their usual criticisms about my life choices. Everything was manageable until 2 weeks ago. My parents called me into the living room with serious expressions. The timing couldn't have been worse. I was in the middle of a crucial project phase, leading a team of developers on a major software update. They claimed they had found inappropriate messages on my laptop, messages that supposedly proved I was trying to have an affair with James. I was completely blindsided. The messages they showed me were completely out of context and clearly fabricated. Some were conversations taken from work chats and edited to look suggestive, while others seemed entirely made up. I tried to explain that I would never do something like that. James is like a brother to me, and I'm deeply in love with Michael. I even offered to show them my real message history, but they refused to look. But they wouldn't listen. My mother was crying, saying how I had always been jealous of Emily's happiness, how she should have seen this coming, given my rebellious nature. My father was furious, calling me a disgrace to the family. They gave me 24 hours to leave the house. 24 hours to pack up my entire life, in the middle of the biggest project of my career. I called my grandparents, desperate and in tears. They've always been my safe haven, the voice of reason in our family. When I showed them the real messages and explained everything, they believed me without hesitation. They took me in, giving me a place to stay and supporting me through this nightmare. My grandfather even helped me set up a temporary home office in their spare room so I could continue working. My father was furious when he found out I was staying with them. He actually came to their house when I wasn't there, screaming at them for enabling me and undermining his authority. My grandfather stood his ground, defending me, which only made my father more angry. He stormed out, vowing never to speak to them again. The sight of my usually calm grandfather shaking with anger after that confrontation broke my heart. The situation got worse when my father started contacting my workplace. He sent emails to my manager and HR department, making wild accusations about my inappropriate behavior and unstable mental state. He even tried to convince them that I was stealing company secrets to share with competitors. Thankfully, my track record at work speaks for itself, and my manager has been understanding, but the stress is taking its toll. I've had to explain these personal issues to my team, which has been humiliating. Then, yesterday, my grandfather passed away suddenly. The pain is unbearable. He was more than just a grandfather, he was my protector, my confidant, the person who always believed in me. What makes it even worse is that my parents didn't even come to the funeral. They were out of town. I later found out through my cousin that they were actually on vacation, posting pictures from a beach resort on Facebook while I was arranging my grandfather's funeral. Each smiling photo they posted felt like a knife in my heart. Michael flew in to help me through this difficult time, taking emergency leave from his job. The moment he arrived at my grandparents' house, my parents suddenly showed up. My father coldly asked why Michael was there, as if his presence was somehow inappropriate. That's when I finally snapped. I asked them who they thought had handled all the funeral arrangements, who had been there for Grandma when she needed her family most. Who had spent nights organizing the service, contacting relatives, and dealing with the funeral home while they were posting beach selfies. Then, in a disturbing turn of events, my father's entire demeanor changed. The anger in his eyes disappeared, replaced by an unsettling calmness. He became eerily composed, saying he wanted to let bygones be bygones, and to forgive me for what happened with James. He mentioned allowing me to stay with Grandma, but in return, he wanted what was rightfully his. The sudden shift in his attitude made my skin crawl. I knew exactly what he was after. The past few years, my grandfather had been quietly successful with his investments. He had built up a considerable nest egg, and my father wanted his inheritance. After everything they'd put us through, after abandoning us during the funeral, he had the audacity to come asking for money. But what he didn't know was that Grandpa had seen this coming. The day after the funeral, as we were clearing out Grandpa's study, we found a note tucked away in his desk drawer. It simply said, "Call Bob." Bob was his lawyer and an old friend, someone who had visited several times over the years. When we contacted him, we learned that Grandpa had left everything to me. Every penny of his savings was now in my name. The house was signed over to Grandma, ensuring she would always have a place to live, safe from anyone who might try to take it away from her. When I told my father this, his mask of calmness shattered. His face turned red with rage as he accused me of manipulating Grandpa, of turning him against his own son. He started ranting about how he had always been there for his parents, how he deserved their money. The irony was almost laughable, him accusing me of manipulation when he was the one who had abandoned his family in pursuit of greed. My mother tried to plead with me, saying things like, "Wasn't it enough that you tried to steal your sister's happiness? Now you want us to suffer too?" But I stood my ground. Grandpa had made his decision, and I intended to honor it. I explained that Bob could verify every word I was saying, that there was no conspiracy. Grandpa had simply known where their priorities lay. As they left, the tension in the air was suffocating. I watched them go, feeling a mixture of sadness and relief. Sadness because my relationship with my parents had reached a point of no return, and relief because Grandpa had protected us even in his absence. Now I'm focused on taking care of Grandma and rebuilding my life. Michael has been incredible through all of this, providing support and comfort when I needed it most. But I can't help wondering if there was something I could have done differently, some way I could have prevented all this pain. Reddit, I know this is a long post, but I needed to get it all out. The inheritance situation has made everything more complicated, and I'm concerned my parents might try something drastic. Any advice on how to protect myself legally would be appreciated. Has anyone else dealt with something similar? How did you handle it? Update 1, a few days after my last post, things have escalated in ways I never imagined. My father, apparently not content with just harassing my workplace, has started contacting our company's clients. I discovered this when one of our biggest clients' representatives pulled me aside during a virtual meeting, expressing concern about disturbing emails they had received about me. They were kind enough to forward these emails. My father had somehow gotten hold of our client list and was systematically trying to undermine my professional relationships. The emails painted me as an unstable person who was stealing company secrets and manipulating elderly relatives for money. What's particularly disturbing is that he included details about client projects that he shouldn't have known about. I'm now wondering if James might have been feeding him information, given his position in a partner company. My company's legal team has gotten involved. They're taking this very seriously, not just because of the potential damage to my reputation, but because my father's actions are threatening company relationships. They've issued a cease and desist letter to my parents, which seems to have only fueled their rage. In response, my parents have launched a full-scale social media campaign against me. They're not just posting on their own accounts anymore, they've created multiple fake profiles to spread their narrative. The stories they're telling are becoming increasingly elaborate. Now they're claiming I've been systematically manipulating my grandfather for years, suggesting I somehow orchestrated his entire investment strategy to benefit myself. What they don't know is that while going through more of Grandpa's papers, I found something shocking. There was a hidden compartment in his desk drawer, classic Grandpa, always the careful planner, containing a USB drive and a stack of documents. The USB drive contained years of email correspondence between my father and various offshore accounts, along with detailed records of what appears to be systematic tax evasion and money laundering through his real estate business. I immediately contacted Bob, Grandpa's lawyer, about these findings. His response was interesting. He wasn't surprised. Apparently, Grandpa had been collecting this evidence for years, documenting every suspicious transaction and questionable business deal. The folder even included photographs of meetings with known fraudulent business operators. Bob explained that Grandpa had been building a case, but was waiting for the right moment to act. The most disturbing discovery was a series of emails showing that my father had been embezzling money from his own parents' accounts for years. He had somehow gained access to their investment portfolio and had been siphoning off small amounts, probably assuming they wouldn't notice. But Grandpa did notice. He just chose to document everything rather than confront him immediately. Bob is now working with a team of forensic accountants to analyze all the evidence. He says we have more than enough to not only defend against any legal claims my parents might make, but also to potentially bring criminal charges. I'm conflicted about this. Part of me wants justice, but another part still struggles with the idea of seeing my own father face criminal charges. The evidence also sheds new light on why James was so eager to move back in with my parents. There are several emails between him and my father discussing business opportunities that look suspiciously like Ponzi schemes. I'm starting to wonder if the whole accusation about me trying to seduce James was actually a preemptive strike, a way to discredit me in case I ever discovered what they were doing. My mother, meanwhile, has taken to calling my grandmother daily, alternating between guilt-tripping and threatening her. The latest tactic is claiming that the stress of my betrayal is affecting my father's health and that if anything happens to him, it will be my fault. My grandmother, bless her heart, has started recording these calls on Bob's advice. To protect ourselves, we've installed security cameras around the house and implemented new cybersecurity measures. Bob helped me secure all my accounts and recommended I freeze my credit. He's concerned that my parents might try to retaliate financially when they realize their intimidation tactics aren't working. The stress has been affecting my work, but in an unexpected twist, this situation has actually strengthened my position at the company. My manager, having seen the evidence of my father's harassment campaign, has been incredibly supportive. They've fast-tracked my application for a fully remote position, which means I no longer need to worry about working from my parents' house ever again. Michael has been my rock through all of this. He's helped me set up a secure home office in a spare room at my grandmother's house, complete with encrypted connections and backup systems. We're also seriously discussing him transferring to a position closer to me, though I'm worried this might just give my parents another target. I've started seeing a therapist to help deal with all of this. She's helping me understand that none of this is my fault and that it's okay to feel both love and anger towards my parents. It's a complex journey, processing the realization that the people who raised you are not who you thought they were. For now, we're waiting for the forensic accountants to complete their analysis. Bob says we should have a clear picture of the extent of my father's financial crimes within a few weeks. I'm bracing myself for what might come next, knowing my parents, they won't take this lying down. Reddit, thank you for your previous support. I never imagined my family drama would uncover something this big. Has anyone else discovered their parents were involved in financial crimes? How did you handle the decision of whether to report them? I could really use some guidance on this. Update 2, Emily showed up at our door this morning, completely unannounced. I was bracing myself for another confrontation, but instead of anger, what I saw was a broken woman. Her eyes were red and swollen, her usually perfect appearance disheveled. Before I could even ask what was wrong, she collapsed into tears. Through her sobs, she revealed what had happened. James had been on a supposed business trip to Chicago. Emily, wanting to surprise him, had flown out to his hotel. She'd been feeling insecure about their relationship and thought a romantic gesture might help. Instead, she walked in on him with another woman in his room. But that wasn't the worst part. During their heated confrontation, Emily demanded to see his phone. What she found shattered our family's entire narrative. The inappropriate messages that had gotten me kicked out? They were never from me. James had saved one of his mistress's numbers under my name to avoid suspicion. He'd been having multiple affairs, using my name as a cover for at least 3 different women. When Emily confronted our parents with this information, their reaction was perhaps the most shocking part of all. Instead of supporting their devastated daughter, they told her to keep quiet and to work things out with James. They were more concerned about maintaining appearances than about Emily's happiness. They actually suggested she forgive him to avoid the embarrassment of a divorce in the family. Emily then discovered something even more disturbing. Going through James's laptop, she found emails revealing that he and our father had been involved in more than just family matters. They had set up several shell companies together, using them to hide money from both taxes and investors. James had been using his position at his company to funnel contracts to these shells at inflated prices. The money trail led to accounts in the Cayman Islands and Switzerland. Emily found photographs of James at meetings with people she didn't recognize, all documented in a hidden folder labeled insurance. It seems James had been keeping evidence of everything, probably as protection in case anyone tried to expose him. As Emily shared these details with me, another revelation came to light. The recent harassment of my workplace and clients wasn't just about the inheritance, it was a desperate attempt to discredit me before I could potentially discover their financial schemes. They had assumed that, given my position in tech, I might eventually uncover their digital trail. My sister is now staying with us at Grandma's house. She's filed for divorce and is working with Bob to document everything she's found. The evidence she brought isn't just damaging to James, it's potentially devastating for our father as well. Some of the transactions she uncovered match perfectly with the records Grandpa had been collecting. The most ironic part? James had been living beyond his means for years, supporting his multiple affairs with money from these illegal schemes. The reason they moved back in with our parents wasn't just about being close to James's job, they were struggling financially because he was spending so much on his secret life. Emily has been incredibly brave through all of this. She's already spoken with the FBI about what she's found, and they're particularly interested in the international aspects of the financial fraud. The investigators have told her this could potentially be a multi-million-dollar case. Our parents have changed their strategy completely. Now they're trying to claim they were victims of James's manipulation, that they had no idea what was really going on. But the evidence suggests otherwise. We've found documents showing our father was actually the architect of many of these schemes, with James serving as the front man in his company. The stress of everything has taken its toll on Emily. She started seeing her own therapist, and we've been spending evenings talking through everything, really talking, for the first time in our adult lives. She's apologized countless times for not believing me, for letting herself be manipulated by James and our parents. I've forgiven her, after all, she was as much a victim of their manipulation as I was. Grandma has been amazing through all of this. She's given Emily the master bedroom, saying she needs the space more than anyone right now. We've started having family dinners again, just the 3 of us, plus Michael when he visits. It's strange how tragedy can bring people together, creating new bonds from the ashes of old relationships. The FBI investigation is ongoing, and we're both cooperating fully. Our parents have hired expensive lawyers and are still trying to maintain their image in the community. But with each passing day, more people are learning the truth. Former business associates of our father have started coming forward with their own stories of questionable dealings. Reddit, sometimes the truth is more extraordinary than anything you could imagine. My sister and I are finally united, stronger together than we ever were apart. We're preparing for what will likely be a long legal battle, but at least we're facing it as a family, a real family, built on truth and support rather than manipulation and lies. Has anyone else gone through something similar, where exposing one family secret led to discovering an entire web of deception? How did you cope with the aftermath? Update 3, things have moved faster than anyone expected. Last Friday morning, while my father and James were having their usual business breakfast at their favorite upscale restaurant, the FBI swooped in. The look on their faces as they were led out in handcuffs, right in front of the city's elite business crowd, was something I'll never forget. Their carefully crafted image of successful businessmen crumbled in an instant. The raid was coordinated across multiple locations simultaneously. Teams hit their offices, our parents' house, and several storage units we didn't even know existed. What they found was staggering: decades of fraudulent documents, offshore account details, and evidence of a money laundering operation that spanned 3 continents. The preliminary estimate puts the total fraud at over $50 million. But that wasn't even the most satisfying part. Remember those photos James had kept as the insurance? Turns out he wasn't the only one documenting everything. 3 of his mistresses came forward with years' worth of text messages, emails, and photos. They had all known about each other and had been quietly building their own case. The best part? They'd been working with the FBI for months. Every recent business trip James took was monitored, every transaction tracked. My mother's reaction to the arrest was exactly what you'd expect. She tried to play the victim, claiming she knew nothing about their illegal activities. That story fell apart spectacularly when the FBI revealed they had recordings of her actively participating in money laundering through her charity foundation. All those fancy fundraising galas she hosted? Just elaborate schemes to clean dirty money. The media coverage has been intense. Every local news channel ran the story, and even some national outlets picked it up. Prominent businessman and son-in-law arrested in multi-million-dollar fraud scheme, the headlines just kept coming. My father's carefully built reputation as a philanthropist and community leader was shattered overnight. Their social circle's response was swift and brutal. The same people who used to fawn over them at charity events now pretend they never knew them. The country club revoked their membership. Their church asked them to step down from all committees. Former business partners are falling over themselves to cooperate with the authorities, each trying to save their own skin. James's company didn't waste any time distancing themselves. They fired him immediately and are cooperating fully with the investigation. Turns out he had been stealing from them too, inflating contracts and pocketing the difference. His professional reputation is completely destroyed, his name has become toxic in the industry. The FBI's forensic accountants found something that made me laugh out loud. That Florida property Grandpa left in the trust? It wasn't just a rundown house, it was the key to exposing their entire operation. Grandpa had discovered it was being used as a front for money laundering and bought it specifically to use as evidence. He knew that if they tried to contest the will, the investigation into the property would expose everything. He played them like a master chess player, even from beyond the grave. Last week, both my father and James accepted plea deals. The terms are harsh: 15 years in federal prison for my father, 12 for James, plus forfeiture of all assets connected to their crimes. They'll both be paying restitution for the rest of their lives. My mother is facing 8 to 10 years for her role in the money laundering scheme. Her sentencing is next month. Emily has emerged stronger from all this. With the divorce finalized, she's used her settlement, what little was left after asset forfeiture, to start her own business. She's moved into a cozy apartment near Grandma's house, and we've never been closer. The sister bond that our parents tried so hard to destroy has become unbreakable. The karma didn't stop there. Remember how my parents tried to destroy my professional reputation? Well, my company's board was so impressed with how I handled the situation that they've promoted me to Director of Security Operations. I now lead a team dedicated to preventing exactly the kind of fraud my father and James committed. Michael moved here last month, and we've bought a house just a few blocks from Grandma. She's doing great. By the way, she's started a support group for families affected by financial fraud, turning her experience into something positive to help others. As for my mother's precious social status, the last I heard, she was spotted shopping at the discount grocery store, being openly avoided by her former friends. Her designer clothes and jewelry have all been seized, and her friends have made it clear she's no longer welcome in their circle. Reddit, sometimes justice isn't just served, it's served with a side of perfect karma. My family's been through hell, but we've come out stronger, closer, and wiser. To everyone who supported me through this journey, thank you. And to anyone facing similar family betrayals, keep fighting. The truth has a way of coming out, and when it does, it's glorious.